Hi, I'm going to talk about sitting at the piano and posture. I'd like to begin by reading from the book I mentioned in the introduction. About what Bach, Carl Philipp has to say about sitting at the piano. I just wanted to say before I read, I'm gonna read the German first of all before I translate, because I want Bach's words to be heard, even if they're heard through me and my pronunciation. I wanted to say that if you think about it, think about it, but Beethoven had this book his whole life, or his whole adult life at least, and he had it with him all the time, and it was dog-eared and, the worse for wear out of sheer use. And so Beethoven himself read these words. And when you think about it, when we read them, we are in a small way, kind of walking in his shoes. We're having the same experience he had. So, that's pretty cool. Yeah, so this is it. This is our first delve into the book. And it's about sitting at the piano. And like I said in my introduction, you might not necessarily have seen that, but this is a good place to begin. Posture and sitting at the piano. If you're a beginner, and if you're not a beginner, it's good too. So this is what Bach says. This is paragraph 10 from the first part. This book has two parts to it, and this is from the first part, and in the chapter called Von der Fingersetzung, which means about fingering. And so in paragraph 10, Bach says, Ein Klavierist muss mitten vor der Tastatur sitzen, damit mit gleicher Leichtigkeit sowohl die höchsten als tiefsten Töne anschlagen könne. Well, that's my German, you'll have to get used to it. And so that translates as a pianist must sit before the keyboard in the middle so that he can strike the highest as well as the lowest tones with equal ease. So that's the first part. So you sit in the center, and then you can hit the highest and lowest tone with equal ease. Okay? That's easy enough. I'm sure Beethoven will have thought the same when he read that. And so paragraph 11 says, Hängt der Vorderteil des Armes etwas weniges nach dem Griffbrett herunter, so ist man in der gehörigen Höhe. And that translates, if the front part of the arm, the forearm, hangs somewhat a little under the griffbrett, which in violin terms the griffbrett is fingerboard. So when he and this is a good point. He doesn't say Tastatur. he says griff breadth. So he makes a distinction. Before, in the previous paragraph, he said tastatur, and in this one he says griff breadth. So I would say the griff breadth is this part. Is this part of the keyboard instrument where the tastatur is on. The tastatur will be on the griff breadth, just as the griff breadth, the strings are over the griff breadth in a violin. The keys are over the griff breadth on a piano. And so he says if the forearms are hanging slightly under the griff breadth, you're at the proper height. So this is how I sit at the piano. And you can probably see that my forearms do hang under, and the elbow is slightly under the griff breadth. And so that's what Bach said about position at the piano and the height you should sit. And I have here as well this book. I don't know. Well, it's Chopin, Pianist and Teacher as Seen by His Pupils. And this is by Jean-Jacques Eigeldinger. Yeah, sorry. And it's in this book. In this book you'll find the transcript or the translation of Chopin's Sketch for a Method, which I as well mentioned in my introduction. And Chopin writes regarding to position at the piano in his Sketch for a Method. Position yourself, and this is already translated. So, position yourself so as to be able to reach both ends of the keyboard without leaning to either side. That's the same as what Bach says. The right foot on the sustaining pedal without operating the dampers. The elbow level with the white keys. So, Chopin says something slightly different. He prescribes that whereas my elbow is lower, he's saying the elbow should be higher. So what he says, if I was to fulfill Chopin's requirements, I'd have to raise my stool a bit. And I didn't adjust the way I sat to coincide with what Bach says. That happens to fit. I mean, it makes it makes me happy. But you can see with the way I sit, it you might agree that it does coincide with Bach's directions. And when I was in college, I didn't know what height to sit at the piano, and and that would become particularly noticeable in situations like exams or a competition. Anytime I had to play, on an occasion, and I'd come to the piano, And the stool, somebody else will have been at the piano before me, and the stool will be set to their height. And then, you're meant to adjust the stool and all. And I didn't know what position to put it. And so one time looking at Horowitz, I decided, Horowitz, I thought Horowitz must be doing something right. And then I thought, I'm just going to blindly follow Horowitz. And Horowitz sits low at the piano. And I thought, I'm going to blindly follow Horowitz because what do I know? And that's again that saying in German, wer nix weiß, muss alles glauben. Those who know nothing have to believe everything. And I was one of those people, but I chose who to believe, and I chose Horowitz. And so what I did was, it's this same stool I'm sitting on that I had, and the lowest setting was still too high. I'm 186 centimeters tall, which is about 6'1". And so what I did was I cut, I don't know, 5 or 6 centimeters off the legs of the stool. And I've been using that setting ever since. And so I thought Horowitz, I don't know. Horowitz knows better. So I just picked that blindly. It was a leap of faith. And I didn't base it on, I just prefer or I just feel that it's better. There was none of that. I thought, I'll do it like Horowitz. I don't know. And who cares? I'll just get used to it. And maybe Horowitz does actually know something more than the average, piano player or teacher or whoever it is. And maybe I'm doing well to copy him, to follow him. And so I was kind of lucky, because that's the thing, when you believe, you're putting yourself completely at the mercy of, you're gambling, you're taking a bet, and you're completely at the mercy of whatever it is you believe. So if it turns out to be true, you'll reap the rewards, even though it will have had nothing to do with you. The fact that what you believed was true is not your doing, and you have, it's got nothing to do with you. So, but if it happens to be true, what you believe, you'll reap the rewards. But if it happens to be incorrect or false, you'll suffer the consequences. And again, it does not matter that it's not your doing or you didn't come up with it. You're throwing yourself completely at the mercy of what you believe. And in real life, you won't be spared punishment if you say, "Oh, but I just believed." And that's what believing. That's why I say that I don't want you to believe. I want you to try it, and agreeing or disagreeing, using your own discretion, and agreeing is not the same. Even though it might have the same outcome, it is not the same as believing. So I believed, and it was lucky. So it had nothing to do with me, that now I can sit here and have a sitting position that coincides with what Bach says. And he says, if you are sitting with the front part of your arms below the grip breadth, slightly below the grip breadth, you're at the appropriate height. He didn't say, whatever you prefer, or some people prefer sitting lower, or some people prefer sitting higher. He didn't go into any of that. He just stated that. And I could say, well, no, wait a sec. There was something else I wanted to say about that. Yeah, so I'm sitting at Bach's prescribed height. And after I cut the legs off my stool, and that became, for reasons like I said, out of blind faith, that became the position I sat at the piano. I was constantly encountering piano stools that were too high at their lowest position. They just didn't go low enough. And most of them didn't. And if you think 186 centimeters or 6'1", that could be classified as tall, but it's definitely in the normal range. I'm not, freakishly tall or anything. I'm normal height. And so before, I was just personally frustrated that the stools didn't go down low enough. But now, and this is something like this, what you've heard here in that book now is a little bit of insight. It's, now what Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach says about the height at the piano. And you can see with that insight, instead of being frustrated, now I can see that piano stool makers did not facilitate Bach's recommendation for sitting at the piano to a person of normal height. So they did not take into account that factor or this position when they were designing their piano stools. And there is one piano stool that's like a bench and it has a sort of a lever and all that does go down lower. So that piano stool is better than the rest. But you could say, knowing that, you could say that these piano stools are not, if you think in terms of technology and stuff, and how important it is, the compatibility with a device. If it's not compatible with anything, it's pretty useless. And the better the device, the greater the compatibility is. So these piano stools are not compatible with Bach. And what Bach says, if you think about it, Beethoven, the way they say, in America, I approve this ad or whatever. Beethoven approves of what Bach says. Bach's father, Johann Sebastian Bach, will approve what his son Carl Philipp says. Mozart called Bach, and not the father but Carl Philipp, he called Bach the father of classical music. Which is a big compliment. You can see in what high regard Mozart held Carl Philipp. So he approves of that message. And the piano stool makers fail to make their piano stools Bach compatible for a person of my height who falls in the normal height category. So, what are you doing? What are you doing? And and I think this is an example what I said about insight, how it'll change the way you see the world. Even if you're a beginner now, you have that information. You can see, you can ask, is this piano stool Bach compatible? And you can determine which stool is good for you. And you know more now than those piano stool makers know. Because if they had known, if they knew, they wouldn't. All they have to do is make the legs of their stool slightly shorter. That's it. So if they knew that, they would have done it, but they don't. So you can see how you start to see the world differently, even at the beginning. Yeah, so that's that. The other thing, is posture. And as well, like I said in the intro video, this does not relate to my discoveries yet. My discoveries are gonna begin in the next video. I was told this at a masterclass by Mark Schwarzentruber, and it, in hindsight, I mean, I noticed it at the time, but in hindsight, it was the only useful thing I was told in all the masterclasses I participated in. You know, which is not great. It's not a great outcome. But it is. I mean, it was a very, very generous of Mark Schwarzentruber to share this with me. And you know, you'll hear a lot. I don't want to repeat any of the stuff that's already out there. So you'll hear a lot about posture, and I did a course in college with the Alexander technique, and you'll hear ideas about posture there. But I was playing at this masterclass, and I was playing the Tempest and having trouble with those triplets in the Tempest, and I thought I was sitting at the piano. I thought I was sitting with my back straight, and like you'll see that's part of what they recommend, that you sit with your back straight. So I thought I was sitting with my back straight, and what Mark Schwarzentruber did was he pushed on the small of my back. So I was kind of like this, thinking my back is straight, but this part here was slumped down. It wasn't straight, and I was just thinking of the first part, the top part of my back. So I thought I was straight. So what he did was he was pushed in the small of the back, and the curve, the spine sort of takes that shape, that it goes. It kind of feels like at that small of the back where, at the pelvis, if that's what you call it, it's pushed up and forward, and then my back was straight. So I think when you're sitting, if you're thinking about sitting straight at the piano, if you push in there, I think that gets to the core of sitting straight. So I wanted to share that with you regarding posture. Check that, try it yourself, or have somebody, not somebody who you'll meet too afterwards, but somebody else. Have them push in the small of your back and see, will that elevate, will that push forward and upwards? And when that does, then your back is, I'd say, properly straight. And it's my I got the heads up on posture early on, so basically I think from Mark Schwartzentruber, so shout out to him. And it wasn't a problem for me. Didn't solve all my problems, but it itself did not create extra problems. And I don't have any trouble with my back. I've heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but Alfred Brendel had announced, years ago now, that he wasn't going to play any big works because of back trouble. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just something I heard. But my back is not a problem. And when I sit, when you sit with your with that straight, the top part of the body, it kind of, it's all stacked. It's balanced on top, so I feel poised and comfortable, and I don't have to apply any strength to maintain this position. It maintains itself. So it is very unobtrusive in terms of playing, and I think that's like life. You don't notice the good people. It's only the jerks who make the most noise, who draw the most attention to themselves, to the point where you can think that like the world is just full of really annoying people. And it's because the good ones, you don't notice them. And so the good stuff you don't really notice because it doesn't cause problems. And I would say that if you're a beginner, and you might feel silly sitting like this with the back straight and basically having a proper piano player's posture at the piano. It might feel a bit stupid because you're only a beginner, but you could ask yourself, does a virtuoso sit like that because he's a virtuoso, or is he a virtuoso because he sits like that? And what I want you as a beginner, and if you're a student or anything, you can still change the way you sit. It goes quickly. If you're a beginner and you're choosing these videos, I want all the pieces of the puzzle to be in their proper place, and so your development will be optimal. And I want you to avoid the cage from the get-go. So I would say, doesn't matter that you can't play yet, sit like that. That piece of the puzzle is going to be in its proper place. And one last thing I want to say is, I could say, I don't care if you sit high or low, and that it's a personal decision and whatever, and that would probably belong to good etiquette or whatever you'd call it. But I don't really want to do that. What I want to do is give a reason for sitting low at the piano. And there's it's known, it's knowledge out there that you'll find that the loudness of how you play is all dependent on the speed at which the key descends, the speed of descent, and it's got nothing to do with weight. This is not, like a teacher of mine used to say, the dogs on the street know that. And I want you to, and if you're a beginner and you don't know that, this won't be the first time I'll brush off that idea, because volume and is all a part of what I have to share. This way of playing the piano. So, but a reason I would say why to sit low is if you hold your hand like this, and if you punch the hand, right, just regular, you'll feel it's not that strong. You can hear even the sound of it. It's a bit, limp or flaccid. I don't know what you call it. Okay, so if you punch like that and try it, just a normal thing. If you move your hand here and punch the same, you'll notice a difference in the impact of the punch, even though it's not, I'm not punching to hurt myself or anything like that. You'll notice a difference. And that's down to the speed of the fist. At this point, if the fist travels all the way over here, when it hits the hand, it's moving slower. The speed of the fist is slower here than it is here. It's moving faster here than here. And, you could see, like, that could be used as well if, in MMA, for example. If you want to, you can notice a difference. In MMA, your opponent, you'll feel stronger. If you close the distance between you and your opponent, your punches will be more impactful. Even though you're punching with the same strength and the same speed, if you close the distance, they'll have, and that as well could explain why, if you have a height advantage, it translates into having a stronger punch. It's because your fist, by the time your fist hits your opponent's face, it's moving faster than if you were fully outstretched hitting your opponent's face. And I don't know anything about MMA or something, but that would be, the insight I would apply and imagine there's truth to it. And so this is sitting high at the piano, and this is sitting low at the piano. And this reason for sitting high and low has got nothing to do with I just feel that, or I just prefer sitting low, or nothing. It has nothing to do with that. That's the reason, or that's a reason I'll present in defense of sitting low at the piano. Like I said, when I cut the legs off my stool, I wasn't thinking I just prefer, or, yeah, and the reason, like providing a reason is something as well that will distinguish my channel from other channels. And it's something I'm definitely going to talk about in a future video, on the concept of why, and reasons, and my thoughts on of what why, of the significance of why is. Okay, I think that's everything. So, to recap, you sit at the middle of the piano, so you can reach the highest and lowest tone with equal ease. Your back is straight, and you push in this small of the back, and you learn, like you can inform yourself with Alexander technique, or there's lots of information out there on what belongs to good posture, and it helps. It keeps you feel poised, you feel ready. And the front part of the arms hangs slightly lower than the grip breadth. And I've given a reason in defense of sitting lower. And if you're a beginner, or if you choose to want to allow me to arm you, to empower you, to make you formidable, I would recommend adjusting the stool to your height that accommodates Bach's direction. There was just one more thing now I remember. In this book, the Chopin pianist and teacher, there was, this is in a bit on page 28, a position at the piano and hand position. And the first sentence in that section says, sit slightly high at the piano and make as few movements as possible. And this is from a book, from page 196 of a book by Aguetant, Corti, Aguetant. And that comes in that section, that comes even before what Chopin himself wrote in the Sketch for a Method. And what I was saying about what he said, the elbow level with the white keys, I had to cut the legs off my stool to achieve this position at the piano at the height of 186 centimeters, or 6'1", thereabouts. If my elbow is level with the white keys, I'm still rather on the low side, I would say. And this very first excerpt in this section of the book says, sit slightly high at the piano. And to my understanding, that is an inaccurate description. It leaves the wrong impression, because when your elbows are level with the white keys, you're not sitting slightly high at the piano. I would still say you're kind of low. And you can see there how important it is to and then you could come away, because it's the very first thing you read in that section, that you could come away with that being the one thing that sticks in your head, you come away from after reading it, and it's an inaccurate description. And it shouldn't have been put first in that section. It should not have been the first thing that you as a reader reads. And if you attribute that to Chopin, sit slightly high at the piano, well, Chopin says to sit slightly high at the piano, you're already warping and distorting the information in my view. So it's very important to think for yourself and consider not to believe, because if you walk away with sit slightly high at the piano, Chopin says to sit slightly high at the piano. If you've believed, you're walking away with that information. You're telling others, Chopin says to sit slightly high at the piano, where he never says that. He never said that. So you can see how ubiquitous misinformation is and how dangerous it is to believe. And, you know, like I said, I could be all PC and you know, great and everything by saying, I don't care if you sit high or low at the piano. But if you think this example, I mean, without changing anything of my strength or my punching technique, the impact of my punch gets stronger right away. You can, as an MMA fighter, I'm pretty sure, maybe that can be, somebody could comment or something, but I am pretty sure the effectiveness of your striking will improve or increase if you can close the distance between you and your opponent. And there's other ways, like you can speed up punch without actually, increase. That's already sore. When I add both, you can increase the speed and the power of your punch without actually using more strength. So, it could work for MMA and it could be useful. You just have to stay tuned. Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. But that basically covers sitting at the piano and posture. And my next video will be about finger position and hand position, and this is where my discoveries begin. So hopefully you'll take a look, and till then I'll just say thanks for watching. Bye.